Hey everybody, hi, this is Kelley Lynn for Suicide Talkz video blog. I believe this is blog number 5 or so. I am one of the featured video blog people that have been asked to talk about different topics on the page, ranging from depression, PTSD, anxiety, panic attacks, grief, all that fun stuff. Isn't that fun? So much fun. So today, what I do is I answer a bunch of questions each time I do a video, or answer one question. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about survivor's guilt, which is a very real thing that a lot of us have when we are the surviving person of someone we lost to death. Whether that's a partner or your mother, your father, your brother, your best friend, it could be anyone that you love. Everyone has a different circumstance. In my case, it was my husband, Don, who had a very sudden, massive heart attack in July 2011, 6 years ago next month. And he left for work one morning at about 4:30 a.m. to go to his volunteer job as a pet rescue person, helping with the cat and dog adoptions. That's what he did on his days off from being a paramedic. And he never came home. And I was asleep when my husband died. I was still home and asleep. And while I was asleep, he was collapsing on a floor in a PetSmart and having a heart attack. And so the worst moment of my life happened while I was asleep, and there was no way of knowing. There was no warnings, there was no symptoms, and I didn't say good morning to him that day. I didn't say good night the night before. I don't remember saying good night. I don't remember anything at all about those few days leading up to his death. So that's my specific survivor's guilt. Is, in my case, it's surrounding sleep, and it's surrounding all kinds of things around sleep and the topic of sleep. So I want to talk today about how to deal with and cope with survivor's guilt, and give you maybe some tips and ideas about how to get through it, how to stop feeling guilty for the death of the person you love, because it's not your fault, and we know that logically, but our hearts tell us different, and our guilt it's very difficult. So the question comes from Laura, and she just wants me to talk about survivor's guilt. So I'm going to do that, and I'm not a professional by any means, but I have been through a lot of stuff, and I'm a pretty smart person and a pretty intuitive person, and because of all the stuff I've been through, trauma-wise and grief-wise and all that, I like to pass forward onto others what has been passed on to me that was helpful. So a few things that I want to say about survivor's guilt. When you have it, first of all, you need to process it. You just need to process it. So it's not just going to go away on its own. You have to process it. You have to talk about it with somebody, preferably a professional. Somebody like a grief counselor, somebody like a therapist, but hopefully a grief counselor, somebody that knows about trauma, so somebody that knows about grief, depending on how your person died, and if it was a sudden loss, or if it was something, a suicide or something like that, that was something that involves shock and trauma. So that's the first thing, is that you have to process it. You just have to. And what that was for me was seeing a grief counselor every week for, I think, 2.5 years. I went to her. And a lot of those weeks we would talk about that day, the day he died, the day that, I woke up and my life was different. I woke up and my husband was already dead. And how that's affected me, and all the questions I had. And we would go over and over and over that day over and over, and because I needed to just go over it and go over it like a broken record. And so that's what I did. I just, she would say, do you want to talk about that day? Do you want to talk about what what he was going through in the ambulance ride? And because I had so many questions, like, was he in pain? Was he suffering? Was he calling out for me? Was he scared? And I felt so guilty. How could I be asleep when my husband was dying and collapsing on a floor? How didn't I know? How didn't I see any symptoms? He was really tired those couple of months, working 2 jobs. Why didn't I know? And all these things would go through my head, and I would just feel so guilty for everything. And it's not my fault, but that's how I felt, and I couldn't get rid of that. And she would take me through those events over and over again, and those questions over and over again, and help me process them, and help me to talk about them, and to kind of work my way through them in my brain and in my heart. And we would sort of play the what if game. I would say, well, what if what if I knew, what if I had recognized a symptom, what if this, what if that? And she would say, well, if you're going to play the what if game, you have to play it all the way. What if he had the heart attack 20 minutes later, and he was in the car driving home, and he killed other people? What if you were in the car with him and you died too? She said, if you're going to go in that direction, it's an endless game, and it's an endless cycle, and there's no point to it, because none of those things actually happened. So what she would tell me is to A, process it, and B, stick to the facts. Stick to the facts, stick to what's accurate and what you know for sure. And she would actually have me write a list of what I know for sure, like what actually happened. Okay, so what actually happened? He fell, he collapsed, he had a massive heart attack. He didn't know that he had heart issues because he had no relationship with his father, and his father never told him, hey son, look out for your heart. So these are facts. And everything else that's not a fact is what I'm putting on myself. It's guilt that I'm creating, and it's things that I'm putting on myself. So you get rid of all those things that aren't facts. You just get rid of them. And this takes time, but this is what you do. So you go over the facts, you figure out what's real, ask yourself what's real in your head, and what's real and what's in my head. What am I creating? And then you repeat the story for as long as you need to, for as long as you don't need to tell that same story anymore, until you basically exhaust yourself from talking about it. There literally was a day where I went into her office finally, and she said, so do you want to talk about that day? And I said, no. I'm kind of freaking sick of talking about that day, actually. And I don't remember when that happened, 18 months into, I don't know. And then we started talking about other stuff, and we started talking about my life now, and what am I going to do next? And, moving forward from that particular guilt and pain, and moving on to something else in the grief. So you got to repeat it with a professional if possible, until it's no longer necessary, until you don't need to anymore. Get all the information. Another thing I did was I got the autopsy report, and I had an EMS brother of his go over it with me, and I was told from him, and this didn't happen until a couple of years later after he died, I was told from this person who knows medical stuff and read the autopsy and told me, and he's a widowed person also, and he said, Kelley, on my wife's grave, I will tell you 100% that Dawn did not suffer. He hit the floor. He was dead before he hit the floor, is what he said. And that gave me so much peace, because for years, for 2.5 years, I was wondering every day, did he suffer? Was he, it was horrible. And so to have that pain, that specific pain taken away in an instant by somebody, by telling me, I'm looking at this report, and by the way he fell, and by, all these things he knew. He said he did not suffer. And he said it was as if a light switch in his body went out. It was on 1 second and it was off the next. And everything that happened, including him falling to the floor, he didn't know. He was completely unaware. So get the facts, because the facts will help you. Any facts you can get from other people will help you to realize what's real and what's not real. After you've done all that, the other thing that really helped me and that continues to help me is to ask myself, what would they tell me? The person you lost, what would they say to you? Would they tell you, hey, keep beating yourself up over this? Hey, keep having guilt and pain over my death? Would they say that to you? You know, hey, get up every morning and be in pain. No, they would not say that to me. Don would not say that to me. He would not want me. He'd say, Kelley, stop that. Stop it. This is not your fault. This is not your fault. Stop it. Live your life. I want you to be happy. I want you to find joy. I want you to experience love again. I want you to have all these things. So don't listen to the voices in your head telling you that you need to feel guilt, or that guilt equals love, or that, you know, guilt and grief are what connect you to that person you lost, because that's not true. The love is what connects you to that person that you lost. So when you stop grieving, you'll never really stop grieving, but when you grieve less, or when the pain gets less, that does not mean, oh, I don't love them anymore, I'm over it. No, there's no such thing. There's no over it. That doesn't exist. You're always going to be moving through it. So just keep telling yourself to live your precious life until you believe it. Keep saying it. Keep saying it until you believe it, because we only get one, and this is it, people. So I really hope that helps. I hope that answers your question at least a little bit. It gives you a little bit of peace. If you'd like more, put it in the comments, and everybody else just keep putting in the comment section below the videos what questions you would like me to answer. I already have a whole bunch to answer for the next few videos, so it might take me a little while to get to your question, but I will answer all of them eventually. So thank you so much. Thank you, Laura, for the question, and I really hope that helped. And I will talk to you next time. Thanks.